A fortune teller, I thought he was fooling Lord Kitchener. If you see the man, the way he inspecting Kitchener hand, he said, my son, I've read your fortune. You'll be having visitors soon. I say, well, mister, who could it be? He said, they'll be coming from overseas.
Ding dong, darling, the Queen and the Duke coming.
Ding
dong, darling, everybody rejoicing.
Oh, man, it's true. They say they're gonna jump up too
and join in the bacchanal for this carnival.
This decision was sure after Philip's visit in '64. Straight away he went and told the Queen what wonderful time he spent. He said, darling, you don't realize Trinidad is a paradise. Her Majesty said, well, if that is for Trinidad and Tobago we heading for.
Ding dong, darling, the Queen and the Duke coming.
Oh, come.
Ding dong, darling, everybody rejoicing.
Man, it's true. They say they're gonna jump up too
and join in the bacchanal for this carnival.
Dr. Williams said the streets must be carpeted all the way, and every man with a Union Jack flying in the hand. The police, the army and the brigade, the entire force will be on parade, with every department lovely and clean, all for the arrival of the Queen.
Ding dong, darling, the Queen and the Duke coming.
Oh, come.
Ding dong, darling, everybody rejoicing.
Man, it's true. They say they're gonna jump up too
and join in the bacchanal for this carnival.
Well, if you don't know, we having a display before they go. Prince Philip done say they had to jump up and break away. He went and he ordered costume for two. The Queen will disguise in red, white and blue. You can imagine the lovely scene. For once we'll be having a true Queen.
Ding dong, darling, the Queen and the Duke coming.
Oh ho,
ding dong, darling, everybody rejoicing.
Man, it's true. They say they go jump up too
and join in the bacchanal for this carnival.
Kitchener, me boy, sit down little bit. I have to explain to you I can't be a hypocrite. You may say I'm sly, you may say I'm bold, but you know that true confession always good for the soul. I went with Harry and I went with Jack, I went with Tony and I went with Mark. Well, ashamed to see the thing that I do. I went with Sonny and I went with Ben, I went with Jerry and I went with Len. Is my conscience make me come and confess to you? Let me just explain how this thing began. I went to a club and had a dance with a gentleman. Then he took me home and gave me champagne. Well, I had a drink but couldn't say what happened again. All I know, I went with Harry and I went with Jack, I went with Tony and I went with Mark. Well, ashamed to see the thing that I do. I went with Sonny and I went with Ben, I went with Jerry and I went with Len. Is my conscience make me come and confess to you? The following night, I bounced up with Jack. After making love to me, he introduced me to Mark. When Mark was all through, he passed me to Ben. Well, Ben used the same routine and passed me over to Len. Oh, come, I went with Harry and I went with Jack, I went with Melly and I went with Jack. Well, I'm ashamed to see the things that I do. I went with Sonny and I went with Ben, I went with Jerry and I went with Len. Is my conscience make me come and confess to you? Listen to this one, I think it's the worst. Before anybody tell you, I'm going to tell you first. Independence time, I was feeling tight. I went with Harry, Jerry, Tony and Sonny that night. Oh come, I went with Harry and I went with Jack, I went with Tony and I went with Mark. Well, ashamed to see the thing that I do. I went with Sonny and I went with Ben, I went with Jerry and I went with Len. Is my conscience make me come and confess to you?
Well, them young girls vex, but you cannot blame them. They claim the opposite sex is causing a problem. They say some of them so dumb, and they don't know how to use their head. Only drinking rum and sleep like a big bandoli in bed.
Use your head, Tom.
It's what the young girls say.
Use your head, Tom.
If you want a nice chick today,
Use your head, Tom.
mama, they don't talk in play.
Use your head, Tom.
They want no man without brain. I am rolling say, they are talking to me at this time and day. I don't want to dummy. When you have to plan, well, how the hell you going to get through? If you have a man that don't know 1 and 1 is 2,
Use your head, Tom.
or you hear the rule,
Use your head, Tom.
the women say they don't want no fool.
Use your head, Tom.
They want a man with big ambition,
Use your head,
who could use the head in all directions.
use your head, Tom. Use your head, Tom. Use your head, Tom. Use your head, Tom.
This is Caribbean Vibes.
Camilla explained, no man shouldn't suffer. If you use your brain, you should get some butter. She said magistrate, lawyers and doctors just use their head. But you playing great, you rather live like Capo instead.
Use your head.
Ministers just use their head.
Use your head.
And to keep the country out of the red.
Use your head.
Sparrow is the master at that.
Use your head.
That's why Ibanga Kong is so fat. Old Madam Andrew giving me a lecture. Kids, whatever you do, keep your head on your shoulder. Things are getting wrong, more entrenchment is on the way. You won't get along if you ain't using your head today.
Use your head.
Doctors use their head
Use your head.
when they think it's time to be fed.
Use your head.
It's time to get serious too.
Use your head.
You can't make dog have more sense than you. Olive, get up there, look at man passing. People in this country, why they so lazy? Just going to the laundry, they hire a taxi. When they going out shopping, you sure they ain't walking. But on Carnival they just so, they walk 100 miles and don't know. When the ping pong say boom and the bass drum say boom,
Coming down the road with a smile.
when we feeling the beat and the music so sweet,
We walk 100 miles.
Lazy Big Eye Sybil is a good example. Last Carnival Tuesday, she sit down by the crazy. Summer All Stars coming, Sybil started jumping. The music so song, she didn't know when she reached in town. When the ping pong say boom and the bass drum say boom,
Coming down the road with a smile.
when we feeling the beat and the music so sweet.
We walk 100 miles.
A bunch of a tourist, well she was the greatest. Early morning juvie, the woman break away. 3 o'clock by Laucan, I meet the same woman. He say, Kitch, I now start to pet. I jumping from 5, I ain't tired yet. When the ping pong say boom boom and the bass drum say boom boom,
Coming down the road with a smile.
yeah, feeling the beat and the music so sweet.
We walk 100 miles.
Yeah. You may say I'm joking or exaggerating, but if you go to reckon, it does really happen. This continuous going wrong from Savannah to Tongue. When you hear this call, you walk about 100 miles even more. When the
funk say boom, and the bass drum say boom.
Coming down the road with no smile.
When we feeling the beat and the music so sweet,
we walk 100 miles. Coming down the road with no smile. We walk 100 miles. Coming down the road with no smile.
Trini jump, Trini whine, Trini rarely had a ball. It is still on their mind. The Olympic in Montreal. Should in case you are not so sure and wonder what they are dancing for. Paisley Crawford just win the goal to put Trinbago on top the world. So, who make me squeal as he captured the goal?
Paisley Crawford is the man.
Who make me feel right on top of the world?
Paisley Crawford is the man.
Juve morning, we all will be celebrating. Let's get moving, I want you to
Jump as you might, show that you got.
so give him the keys to the whole of the land.
Paisley Crawford is the people man.
Well, the day of the race, brother, you talk about speed. It was pace, mama pace, old man fighting for the lead. In the inner lane of the track, I can see the colors red, white and black. As they scamper down past the post, Don Query second and Crawford first. So, who make me squeal as he kept the goal?
Paisley Crawford is the man.
Who make me feel right on top of the world?
Paisley Crawford is the man.
Juve morning, we all will be celebrating. Let's get moving, I want you to
Jump as you might, show that you got.
so give him the keys to the whole of the land.
Paisley Crawford is the people man.
Was a day of upset. Favorites couldn't shine. Ainsley moved like a jet and had them trailing far behind, while the Yankees were shouting plans, hoping that he may have advanced. Our Crawford done win the race with the Russian beaten into third place. So, who make me squeal as he captured the pole?
Paisley Crawford is the man.
Who make me feel right on top of the world?
Paisley Crawford is the man.
Juve morning, we all will be celebrating. Let's get moving, I want you to
Jump as you might, show that you got.
so give him the keys to the whole of the land.
Paisley Crawford is the people man.
and the tails start to wag. I jump on a ball hooray as they hoist our flag and the national anthem play. There were applause from everywhere as 80,000 spectators cheer. It was Crawford, the southern lad, had just made history for Trinidad. So who make we squeal as he captured the goal?
Is he Crawford, is the man?
Who make we feel right on top of the world?
Is he Crawford, is the man?
Juve morning, we all will be celebrating. Let's get moving, I want you to
Jump as a man, shoot up the man.
yes, give him the keys to the whole of the land.
Is he Crawford, is the people man?